Absolutely delighted to invite Michael Ohajuru. Michael is a senior fellow of the Commonwealth Institute and a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, with a passion for the Black presence in Renaissance Europe and Britain in particular. He founded the Image of the Black in London galleries, gallery tours presenting the Black presence in national collections in London, now in its 6th year. And he's with us today in his role as director and chief evangelist, as he tells me, of the John Blanke project, an art and archive project he established in 2016 to celebrate John Blanke, the Black Trumpeter at the courts of Henry VII and Henry VIII. Welcome, Michael. So, Michael, let's start with this. Who was John Blanke and how do we know about him?
John Blanke is the first person of Black African descent who have both an image and a record. And it's that image which makes him so special, because there are many Black Tudors or Black people in this period. It mentioned the record featuring, perhaps we'll talk about them later. But John Blanke, we have his image. And image today is so important in terms of understanding society, news, who we are, life. It's all the image is really what drives the narrative. And we have the image, and we don't just have one image. We have 2 images of him, which makes him really, really exceptional.
So where's the other image?
Well, he appears twice on it's the same document.
Really?
It's on the Westminster tournament roll. He appears at the start, at the opening, the opening of the joust, which Henry VIII called to celebrate the birth of his son on New Year's Day that year by Catherine of Aragon.
And so what is the role? Tell me the role. How does the role relate to that event? Well,
the role is just a fantastic document. There's so many ways into this role. I have to calm down. If we take the John Blanke way in, the role was commissioned by Henry VIII to celebrate or to commemorate the birth of his son on New Year's Day that day. It was a joust he wanted to celebrate, as I say, the birth, but to show the rest of Europe, or the people of England and Europe, what an important event it was. So this joust was to celebrate that, and it shows really 2 days. And John Blanke appears twice. On the first, on the opening of the joust, where the court processes to the tilting yard, and then we have the joust, and then at the end of the joust, he leads the winner, and guess who the winner was? Henry VIII. He leads him in. So he appears twice, in the opening and the closing ceremony of those 2 days in February 1511. And that document.
Does he look exactly the same in both images?
Well, the short answer is no, in the sense that he's clearly Black, because he's in a troupe of 6 trumpeters, and he's in the middle. He's in the middle of the back row 3, and he's the only one who's Black, clearly Black. You can see that, but he's the only one wearing a headgear. In fact, it looks like a turban, and so he's doubly different, not just from his dark skin, but through that turban that makes him look that makes him look different and makes him look exceptional.
So, what else do we know about his life? I mean, that's fascinating that he was here so early.
Excuse me. Well, we know very little. We know he first appears in the record of 1507. He was paid wages, so he wasn't a slave. So we know he was paid wages, and he disappears from the record, or the last recording was 1512, when the king gives him a wedding present. And in between, he's recorded as being given cloth for various court occasions, like from the funeral of Henry VII or the coronation of Henry VIII. And obviously for the Westminster tournament roll event for that joust, he's noted there. And what's particularly interesting is there's two things that are particularly interesting. The first, he's actually recorded as petitioning the king for a wage increase, and because one of the trumpeters had died some time ago. So he says to Henry, "I want some money back. I want my money to be the same as Dominic, the trumpeter who died, because his wage was 8d a day. He wanted doubled to 16d. That's old pence." And you didn't want it just doubled, you wanted it backdated. And Henry signed it. And that indicates to us that he must have thought well of him to accept the doubling and backdating of it, to instruct the chancellor to pay him. But also it reflects the confidence that John Blanke had in himself. So you have a sense of a man who knew his worth. So the records are not complete. There's not much that we don't know, which we'd like to know. But those are examples of where he actually appears, fleeting references in terms of the Tudor court record.
So is this the document that you're referring to? I think
this is the 1507. This is his first entry into the court records there, and you can clearly see eagle-eyed item to John Blanke, the Black Trumpet, and it says for his month's wages of November past at 8d the day, 8d, and that works out at 20 shillings for the month. And when I present this, have a bit of fun with the audience in terms of what is 20, what is 8d, how many pence in a pound, and how many shillings in a pound. It's very much old money.
I have no idea. I can't remember any of that.
Exactly.
I probably wasn't even born then, right?
No.
I think I was, but there we are. But am I right in thinking that he might have come to England with Catherine of Aragon, who was Spanish? Is that one of the ideas? I think you sent me a photograph of her.
That's one of the most prominent thoughts amongst historians, that he came with Catherine of Aragon in 1495, when she came over to marry Henry's brother, who sadly died, and she eventually married Henry. So
yeah, I was just going to say that's really interesting, because I studied Spain in the kind of late Middle Ages and early modern period, and I know that there were a lot of Black Africans in Spain by the 16th century. So it wouldn't be surprising, probably more than in England then, that he might have come across that way.
Much more. Spain had been when the Pope divided the world between the Portuguese and the Spanish. The Portuguese the Spanish had been trading with Black people from the middle of the 15th century, 1450s or so. So Black people were quite common in Spain. In fact, some people say it's been written that Seville, up to 10% of Seville was Black. And so the Black people would be quite common at the court. And as far as trumpeters are concerned in Spain, that they can be traced back to the Islamic courts, to 11th, 12th century Islamic court, where they had Black trumpeters. So the Black trumpeter was well known in Spain, and Black people were well known in Spain. So it would seem to be natural for Catherine to have a Black Tudor, a Black trumpeter in her presence, in her entourage, when she came over to England to be married.
And do we know anything about whether he ever got married? I mean, do we know anything about the rest of his life?
The short answer is no. All we do know, the king instructed the great wardrobe to give him a bonnet and some purple documents. What's recently come to light is we've actually got the instructions to the tailors to build that, and this is where the National Archive and the Tudor tailors have looked at a document collectively, and they've reconstructed what that garment would have looked like, and it's a long flowing garment. We could see that Henry gave John as a wedding present.
They actually made it. They made this garment.
So he just didn't give him the cloth, but he actually gave the instructions to actually be able to make the thing, and it's quite an expensive, quite an upmarket an upmarket garment. When the Tudor tailors looked at the materials that made it, they said, yes, this is quite an elite garment. So it reflects the fact that just underlines the fact that Henry did think well of him. Did think well of John Blanke.
Can you see that garment anywhere? Is it on display in a museum somewhere? Or?
Well, the short answer is no. The long answer is it's actually on the website, because actually there's a mock-up of it. They were able to reconstruct it, and if you go to the website, you see there's a picture of the garment. You can actually see it's quite a long flowing. It looks quite an elite kind of garment.
Great. Well, we'll talk about the website in a minute, but let's talk a bit more first about you know, so were there many Black men and women in England at this time, and the rest, well, but England particularly, Britain particularly?
We don't know the exact number, but we know they were there, and they were there all over the country. Yes, predominantly in the seaports. They were there, their presence was there, but they were throughout the country. And the way they got there, we believe, was predominantly that they were being brought by sea. And they came from a number of parts, reflecting the voyages that the British seafarers were making. People like Raleigh and Drake, they would have brought back servants. They would have brought back servants to England to look after them. There you can see some pictures of Sir Walter Raleigh on the left there and Drake on the right. And so they would have been doing, on the one hand, they were often servants, probably slaves. Were they paid? We can discuss that. But several were paid. I clearly know with John Blanke. But they did other jobs as well. They played part of Tudor life, often bringing technology and skills that were not so present in England, such as steel making or needle making skills, silver, cloth, silk weaving. These new skills from Europe, as Britain was at the time, or England was expanding into Europe.
Yeah, because in Spain, the Muslim cities had fantastic silk looms and silk weaving workshops that were producing really, really beautiful textiles at that time that were being used a lot by the Christian rulers of Spain. Yeah. But they were even buried in them, which was amazing.
Exactly. I argue this is a kind of a Brexit in reverse, because this is England or Henry reaching out to Europe and bringing those things in, like I say, these silk weaving, needle making, and the arts, because arts was a way of showing your magnificence of your court. And so it would be natural for Henry to bring these technologies, these skills, to show how brilliant, how magnificent his court was when compared to other courts of Europe.
Yeah. And so what did Drake and Raleigh do? I mean, how were they connected to this whole thing?
Well, they were privateers, or no, they were pirates sanctioned by the Queen, you know, because
this is a bit later. This is Elizabeth, right? No,
yes, Elizabeth I. And what's happening is, because the Pope had divided the world between the Spanish and the Portuguese, the British kind of attacked the Spanish or Portuguese ships and took the gold and the slaves and etc. that they had on board, and then traded with them. But the Queen or the court couldn't sanction that, because they'd be going against what the Pope or the Holy Roman Empire, they were going against the laws of engagement across Europe. But nevertheless, they were projecteers commissioned by the Queen to do these tasks. And in doing these, raiding these Spanish ports and ships, they took on board Black people because they were part of the cargo of the traffic of the time.
That makes sense. Yeah, and so I believe there's they had a particular specialization in trumpet playing elsewhere in Europe too, right?
Well, not so much a specialization. The trumpeter was the trumpets first were part of the court. You know, here comes the king or queen, trumpets. There goes the king or queen, trumpets. Dinner is served, trumpets. It was part of the, as I say, the punctuation of the court. Show the magnificence. And you couldn't build a hall without having some minstrel galleries, some people for music to be played. It was a key part of the court across Europe, and trumpets were a natural natural part of that. So it was not special in the case that we had a trumpet, even a black trumpet here, because they were well known across Europe at that time.
Right. So let's talk about the John Blanke project, your project. Tell me about it. What is it, and how did it start?
Well, the John Blanke project was really my response to that. I heard somebody say it would have been inaccurate or inauthentic to have a black presence in a film about Elizabeth I. And I thought, and that's because I'd been conditioned to believe that there were no cowboys, there were no black cowboys. And it wasn't until I saw in, I forget the name of the movie, there was a movie where they had
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles,
Blazing
exactly.
Saddles, yeah.
And I was just shocked at that. That's not right. They were mocking the black presence. But then when you do the research, a quarter to a third of the cowboys were black. They'd been effectively eliminated because they didn't fit the narrative or the white narrative of the white cowboy hero. So in the same way, the black presence in Tudor time has been eliminated. They were there, not in great. They were not saying there were thousands. There wasn't like Lisbon, or it was built at the time 10%. But nonetheless, they were there. And they're recorded. So to have their presence would seem quite natural. So I was inspired, to imagine the Black Tudor trumpeter, and I got artists and historians to do just that, and historians to write 300 words to fill in, forgive the pun, fill in the blanks about John Blanke from the little that we know about him. People like Olivetti Hotel or Preston Macchiadi or the historian Robin Walker, I invite them to say a little bit about what they saw of him. Or, for instance, as I say, Professor Olotelli saw him as an Afro-European, whereas Hakimadi saw him as an agent of change. And Robert Walker talks about him being a man, a trumpeter, changing history. Or did he change history? So just getting people to think more about John Blanke, and then I got artists to reimagine in an A4 black and white drawing. People like Paul Dash, and none of the work is online. And what we have is I got the artist to make a statement. I imagine John Blanke as, like Paul Dash. He said, I imagine him as a survivor who encountered ridicule, enmity, and strife in his life. That's how he saw him. Whereas Alvin Kofi saw him as a learned man with great awareness of the world. So it was their reconstruction, or Siobhan Stanley. She talks about as a maverick kind of character, with a musical experimenter. Whereas Sharon Foster saw him as a strong, charismatic, creative individual. Well, one of my favorites is Lynette Camella. And she uses her calligraphy, I can't even say, calligraffiti to reimagine John Blanke. And then there's the late John Daniels. He imagined him as a trump card, and he recreated it in a very graphic way. And right now there's about 60 artists and about 30 historians have made a contribution. You can check them online at johnblanke.com.
So can you actually see the drawings and things online? You just said you didn't put them online, or can you see them now?
No, because I want them to be seen as a body of work. So it's the idea of John Blanke and different manifestations of them in terms of how artists or historians reconstructed them. And we just had an exhibition last year at the Walker Art Gallery where we had some 24 of them actually on display, and there was a video with the remaining part of the collection. You could see. You could see them as at the exhibition.
Yeah, it's a great exhibition. It was, and you can see the whole thing online. And this is one room of it. Is that right? The John Blanke exhibition.
Exactly. What's so exciting about the legacy? They've actually recreated a 3D AI version. Augmented reality version of it. So if you go online, again, you can see on johnblanke.com, you can not only go inside the whole exhibition, but you can actually get inside the John Blanke part of it and get quite up close and personal. It's really, really quite exciting way they've recreated the exhibition online.
That's fantastic. And I mean, I would just urge you maybe to think about putting the images online, because I mean, one of the points that Athena has, one of the things that we're doing is to make everything digital so that we can really extend our reach as far and wide as possible. Because I know that we have people that watch from the States or, from other countries in Europe, and I hope also from countries, further apart, further away from other continents. So I would urge you to reconsider maybe and put some of your images online so that those people people too can see.
Well, there's one image online, the very first one, Stephen B.
Yeah.
Watley's. That's actually online. The rest, but I am producing a book. There will be a book, and crowdsourcing. That's going to happen later this year. The crowdsourcing for it.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
So they're all going to be together in one place. Because I must stress, Nicola, that the key thing is it's a body of work about John Blanke to get into your ideas. So one image in its own is just one part of an imagination. It's a collective. So you can imagine that there were people there, and then go on the other journey to find out the other black presences, the needle maker, the silk weaver, the lady who left a cow, or did I say the prostitute, the many different roles that black people had in Tudor England. John Blanke is kind of a segue into that, or introduction.
Yeah. And so tell me, there was an exhibition recently, I think it's just finished, at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And I mean, did they have the Westminster roll there?
No, regrettably it didn't. But there was about art, and it was about art and magnificence in the Tudor court, and they had some wonderful pieces. I had the pleasure of being invited over there to talk about John Blanke and to take a group of people through the exhibition, to take them to the Black connection that was there through the objects that are on display. And I was able to do a small presentation on John Blanke along with Miranda Kaufman, who's written the Black Tudors, the Untold Story. Together, we kind of positioned the Black presence in Tudor England to get that connection with the exhibition and in the Met. It actually the exhibition's finished now. It's finished on the 18th.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But again, you can see how the video. It's online.
Of your talk, yeah.
So along the exhibition site, so you can get an idea of. Well, look at the exhibition. Look at the magnificence and quantity of the work that they had on display, and you can see the Black presence there through the video that we did, or the video we recorded of Miranda and I talking about the Black presence in the Tudor court and Tudor times.
Yeah, my colleague Jonquil O'Reilly did a podcast with the curators, and was really talking about the fashion and luxury textiles and luxury goods, which was kind of more what the exhibition, I suppose, was about. But I highly recommend your talk, because I think it really adds a perspective to the whole thing, which is super interesting.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I hope we'll get you back to talk about other periods, because there are so many other things that we can talk about in future. I mean, later periods. There was a wonderful exhibition at the Rembrandt House in Amsterdam a few years ago about blacks in the 17th century in Amsterdam, and I think we could apply that same lens to what's happening here, and maybe even see if we can get one of the curators of that exhibition to join us.
That'd be excellent. I do a presentation on Rembrandt's blacks, and it's quite interesting to compare the Tudor blacks to Rembrandt's blacks, because it's a little later in time, but essentially how things have moved on in terms of how people fit into the black people fit into the life, the Rembrandt's life, and also in the images that the artists were doing of black people at that time. The wealth.
Super interesting, yeah. But the other thing which is interesting is that I get the feeling that this is a field which is moving very, very quickly, because you found these documents, or these documents were found in the archives about John Blanke, and I know from my own PhD research that looking in archives is a very long and difficult process. I mean, when you look at a document, and one of these old documents, I mean, like this one, for example, it takes a long time to read it. You have to be very experienced at reading this kind of handwriting. But I imagine that now that we're kind of beginning to know where to look, which kinds of bits of the archive might be interesting, that other things are going to turn up, and we're going to find records of other people and other events and that sort of thing. Is that how you feel?
No, it's actually happening, which to my annoyance, that's not my annoyance, but that they found, the National Archive have found a 1488 John Blanke. He's a footman to Henry VII. So is that John Blanke 1488 footman the same as the John Blanke 1507 trumpeter? You know, right now we don't know. And people are looking at narratives to try and make the connection. Could he be? And so in some ways, I may have upset some number of people, myself included. We're rewriting history. But having said that, welcome to modern history, where it's a work in progress. Where people, as we look more into their records, as we look records and try to understand them more, then we see more because we know more. And so it's bringing them out. So this is where documents are being made very real. And these are really exciting times now as we dig into the record to find out more things. And let's just finish on just one other one. It's not just the Black presence, it's the disabled presence. Well, recently, there's a lot of work has been done on Henry VIII's later life, where he had to be wheeled around in a wheelchair, problem with his eyesight. You know, he was a disabled person. How the court managed him, but we have the modern interpretation of Henry doesn't include that. But as it doesn't, as the Tudor record doesn't include anything on disability. But now we're going back and trying to understand the disabled presence in Tudor times. So these are exciting times for archives to renew or to look into them with different eyes and different lenses.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a great place to end for now. And we'd love to have you back. Open invitation, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And we'll all go and look at the John Blanke website and the exhibition. Yeah, come back to you with more questions next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed.